Hello.
Well, hello, Cathy. You literally give the best intros, by the way.
Thank you. And it's really easy to talk about people that you love.
Thank you.
And you're just like a magical sunbeam, like a ladybug on a pretty day, just kind of walking around the earth. So it's really fun to sort of just talk about it. So I want to allow you to kind of speak to those two things that I just talked about, because I really do think those are like the essential things that you came to the world to point us to and to teach and to embody. And so, what do you want to say about that and how we can all find our way back to those two sort of places?
The two places being presence and fun.
Yeah.
Oh, as you're talking, I thought of this term that I just learned kind of recently, and it's the micro moments and how we often overlook the simplicity of holding our kid's hand and realizing that it's going to grow, and they won't always want us to hold their hands. Because this morning, I Juniper wanted my daughter, she's 3 years old. She wanted to be held. Like she just wanted to be held. And I had to, as you know, mornings are pretty hectic, but I try to have slow mornings and I try not to feel so frantic. But this morning, for some reason, she woke up later. She needed to be held. I wanted to do my hair. And I realized as soon as I give myself the permission to put myself on my list, usually it's just like kids, lunches, did they do their homework? I mean, my 3-year-old has homework. It's really fun stuff. But after you do all that, then you're the next person on your list. But as soon as I bumped myself up, I realized I have to have so much more grace and patience for myself and for my kids, or else I'm just missing the plot. You all wouldn't have cared if my hair wasn't done. I just really wanted to do it, right? But it reminded me that we have to be present to whatever is, right? We can't control other people. We can't control the energy around us all the time. So I just had to take a pause and I just held her. And I just held her for as long as she wanted to be held. And then she's like, me go brush my teeth now. And then she ran off. So it was just so beautiful, right? Because if I didn't take the time, and I think it lasted maybe 30 seconds, right? If I kept putting her off, who knows what I would have missed? And then that could have snowballed into something else. But instead, it was just like this beautiful pause for, gosh, she just wants to be held. Like, I don't know why. She just does.
Yeah. That's a really, it seems sort of like mundane, but all of us are living those kinds of experiences all the time. And, we can talk about how to better our investment portfolios or how to build businesses but it's like the actual lessons we need are about those nitty gritty moments that make up most of our lives, whether they're unsexy or not. And you're right. It's like by just leaning into it and surrendering and the gentleness. I mentioned the presence piece because in your work, and I think this will lead us to the second thing, which is the fun, in your work as a artist and as a scrapbooker and as a lover of helping other people to find their inner artist and their scrapbooker inside of them, you once said to me, the whole reason that you love it is because it allows people to go back and reflect on these little moments and actually savor them and almost relive them. And then we don't miss the things that we actually are receiving. It's so often that I have to tell myself, oh my God, this is that moment where you wanted to do this thing and just can all of you come and just unwrap this present moment, which is so nice. It's like our brain future trips and past and this, and it's just so tell us about the artistry and the scrapbooking and how it's such a window into the moment. And for you, why that evokes for you so much pleasure in helping other people to like actually log the moments that they forget that they even had.
You're so right. I think I love scrapbooking because it really allows us almost to pause time. It's like this little pause button, freezing time that we wanted to savor from our past. So we print out the photos, we have these memories. And then while we're actually scrapbooking them, we are taking those memories and processing in beautiful ways where you're just opened up to so much more that you're investing in your future moments that are to come. I don't know if that makes so much sense, but I really love the idea of savoring something because when my word of the year was savor, I think it was 2019, what I had realized is that I was going from one moment to the next, meaning I was working in the studio and then I would have a trip. So then I would go on this trip and then I would come back, work on this in the studio again, and then be ready for the next trip. I was always on the go. And though I felt like I was present enough, I wasn't feeling that fulfillment of nurturing that, like, and that relishing part of, wow, I worked so hard to get here and I'm so blessed and lucky for all of that time that I put in. Now, am I going to even enjoy it? Or am I going to just be on to the next thing, future tripping about the next trip, project, collaboration, without the ability to say, hey, look, you deserve this time to
Yeah.
do whatever you want with it. If you want to look back at the photos, print them out, document them in your scrapbook or journal, if you want to go deeper into how much more is the universe willing to bring me if I'm open to more possibilities, right? And I'm not limiting myself to just what has happened in the past. I feel like we have so much to learn from our lives and other people's lives of recognizing, that Amy Poehler quote, good for her, but not for me.
Mm.
I experienced so much of that, but I also had that thing inside of me. It's like, okay, well, what would be good for me? Right? Good for her, but not for me for that particular thing. But what do I want? And what do I want right now? And how is it going to give me fulfillment, make me feel freedom, and where I can have fun along the way? Those are my 3 Fs, which I base everything off of and I filter everything through.
I love that. So you're saying you make a decision based on, is it going to be fun? Is it going to be fulfilling? And does it create freedom?
Yes.
That's
And freedom
amazing.
could be creative freedom, it could be financial freedom, it could be freedom of choice.
Yeah.
Well, however you define that, I think it's so essential to know your core values
Yeah.
and where you're going through. I think that Fs are just fun because I'm like, oh yeah, I have 3 F words that I love. And whether they're C words or whatever you want. I mean, I tried to change them up. So at the beginning of, I think I want to say at the beginning of 2020, I had 4 C's. So it's like creativity, community, connection, and contribution.
Mm.
So whatever it is for you, as long as you're doing the things that you
Yeah.
love, and whether you document your life or not, right? I mean, we all do to some extent. If you don't journal or scrapbook, I guarantee you there are probably too many photos on your camera roll of things that you love, people you love,
Yeah.
places you love. There are ways to extract these wonderful bits and moments of your life and then decide how you, and use it to inform how you want to live for the future
Yeah.
without worry, future tripping, all of that that comes with it.
Yeah. It like makes me like take a breath. And, it's interesting because I think that there's so much I want to say about this topic, but we live in such a, we live in a certain society which pushes a achievement. You got to do the work, you got to produce, you got to have something to post, right? And last year we had somebody on my podcast who wrote a book called The Fun Habit. and he's a doctor at USC, psychologist. And when I first had him on, I mean, I was actually like, oh, this is really interesting, but I wonder like if my audience is going to find this really helpful. Maybe it's frivolous. Like, I mean, I hadn't like really looked into it much. And what got me is that he said, if you want to actually be more productive, the studies show you need to slow down in your day and you need time to just do things for fun. And what's so important about you, your work, who you are in the world, your children, your light, your home, the colors you use, like everything is this. But, for so long, women fought to have similar, I say similar because it's still not equal, but wanting to have like the equal, sort of life abundance that men have. And we're still on that fight, and that's an important fight. And we have so much to teach them. Like the studies show that the amount of time people spend at the office, at a certain point, they're not productive at all. The studies show that the people who have made the biggest waves in humanity, these ideas come from having the space for the idea. And it's because they themselves have this dropping in where all your wisdom is. Ryan Holiday said to me that he was like in his office, and his wife was like, we need to go on a vacation. You just sit at your desk and you're always in your office. And he kept pushing it off because he said to her, I need to write my next book, because he was a writer and that is how they made their living. And she insisted, like, we have to go take a trip. And he resisted it. And finally he was like, well, this sucks because I don't have the book. I've been like starting and stopping books that don't feel like they're the book. And they go on this trip and it takes him like 3 days, he said, to arrive on the trip. And finally he like actually has a moment where like he let go. He was on the trip and he was building a sandcastle with his kid at the beach. And he was really enjoying himself and he was present. And later that day, he had the idea for the book and he wasn't looking for it. And that became his biggest book. I've had that experience so many times where my retreating, my play, my time to just live and be is what brings me forward faster than the pushing and the doing. And so it seems like, oh, she said the word fun. That's so cute. Like, great, good for her. Not for me, but good for her, right? But the joke's on you, because guess what? If the only way you can enroll yourself in doing more to slow down and have fun is to know you'll be productive, I can tell you unequivocally that the studies show you are going to be so much more of who you need to be. But it doesn't mean taking those time. This is what he said. It doesn't mean taking that time and scrolling your phone. That's not fun. You might think it's fun. That's not what he means, right? It's like the activities that just allow you to like take a dance class, do watercolor, take a walk in nature, right? Like where you're whole having this like some kind of sensory, fun, playful, full body experience. So tell me how you help people, because I know when you do these, when you facilitate workshops and when you teach people to do this, whether they know it or not, they're resistant to it. There's something about it that seems like, well, who has the luxury to do that? And yet you see the benefit of what happens, how people come alive when they actually create a practice like this in their life, and they judge themselves. I'm not good at painting. And you're like, oh my God, you don't have to be good at it. So talk to us about what we could maybe do as like making a small change like this, and what you've seen when you finally get somebody to overcome their resistance and start to play more in their life.
Yeah, I love what you said. I really believe that creativity is essential to well-being and happiness. And it is something that it's not a luxury, right? You said that earlier. these are all permission slips that you're hearing from people, whether you want to believe that fun can become a habit. I mean, how amazing is that, right?
Yeah.
Why won't we allow ourselves to accept that that's possible? Well, because maybe we're conditioned a certain way, right? Where you have to work hard. I mean, I have this really, I've been doing some deep dives into it because I think it's actually a generational trauma to be a workaholic, right? I don't know much of the scientific basis upon it, but I know as an example and witnessing other women who are overproductive, overfunctioning, and really will not put themselves first, it is absolutely necessary to create that space and to hold the space so that you have time in your schedule, whether it's blocking off some time in your calendar just for you, right? And people like to say like, oh, we don't have, or I don't have time, or I don't feel like I can make time for this thing. I am a 45-year-old who loves stickers and playing with watercolors, and I tear stuff out. Look, this is our trip to Universal Studios. You can do whatever you want. I promise you, you can step fully into who you are, into whoever that inner child is that wants to come out. If you want to go take a dance class, just like you said, it was so funny. The year before I met my husband, I was kind of a crazy person, meaning that I wanted to do all these things. I had this bucket list that I was going to finish in 1 year because I turned 30 and I thought my
Right.
life
Oh
was
my
going to
God.
be
Oh,
going to hell because my 20s were so fun. And I was like, I didn't get to do all these things. I learned how to snowboard.
that's so cool.
I went on all these trips. And the crazy thing is that my cousin was like, you just turned 30. Your birthday party looks like you just turned 21. And I was like, hey, you know what? I am just fully open to whatever happens. You know, I was newly single out of a 4-year relationship. I was just living so fully open and aligned with whatever I felt like doing. So, and I have to tell you, it was a fun year, right? But that was just the beginning of it because I had just given myself permission to have those experiences. And somebody called me an experience junkie. Well, I've never heard of that before. Oh, I went skydiving twice, like all these like random things, right? That I felt like doing. And I'm so glad that I did those things, sometimes scrapbook them, maybe inspired somebody else just by sharing the experience to allow themselves permission to do that thing. When I was at Universal Studios, I have to tell you, so there's this little box that comes at the Toadstool Cafe. And I was like, is it okay if I get another one of these that's clean so that I can take it home for my scrapbook? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't think we can do that. I was like, that's okay. I'll just wipe this one out. So I like literally cleaned the little box and took it home, you know, flattened it, put it in my little purse. I it just doesn't matter to me what anybody else thinks about my fun and my creativity. Trust me, I have plenty of people judging me in my own head. Like I hear voices in my head or thinking or saying, you know, oh, you can't do that. You know, you had to work hard. You got to do these things. And why does life have to be so hard? Because it's ingrained in us to believe that we don't deserve it if it comes easy. Now, that might not apply to everybody, which if it doesn't apply to you, oh my goodness, please share your wisdom because I feel like I spent so many years of my life so mean to myself in my head, thinking somebody else is going to hate me for doing this. Somebody else is going to be mad at me for this. They did not care.
Right. Be careful.
They're on their own journey. They're worried about themselves.
Right. Right. Yeah, I love this so much. And I just want to say that part of this, it reminds me, you know, those people in my life, and I don't, you know, there's not like thousands of these people, but I have a couple handfuls of people in my life like you, Amy, who just really inspire me because you have crafted a life that you love. That's the name of her book and podcast. And I heard you just say something that has a quality that I want to just bring to the forefront, which is it's the courage to just be your own advocate. And I say that because what I have noticed in the lives of women who have crafted a life that they love is that quality. And what does that mean in this context? Well, as we sit here, part of the reason that you have carved out time to scrapbook is because you've also created over these years a gorgeous gift for yourself, which is getting paid to do what you love. And you make stickers and you have licensing deals and partnerships and collabs, and you get paid to create murals and all of this stuff. And I want to come back to what I just said, because when I think about my journey, when I think about the friends of ours, mutual friends, like if you are your own advocate, you are disproportionately rewarded in life for doing courageous things. And so instead of having to do thousands of hours of things that you don't want to do, the potency in having courage, like when you, and I'll ask you to share, I remember the story about American Crafts where you just walked on in and were like, hey guys, hey. And it's very reminiscent. Like people will ask me to trace back, how did you build that business? Or how did you get that podcast? Even Amy was like such a early fan of my podcast and such a supporter. She's like, how did you get so and so and so? And I'm like, I just asked, you know what I mean? But in order to do that, you have to have a tremendous amount of actual confidence in, I don't care what other people would say about anything, but I know that I am going to have so much fun. And this is my generous offer, is to go all in here. When you have that across the board in your life, you can be very decisive about what it is that you want to carve out, you want to create, you want to cultivate. And by doing the things that most people avoid, but doing those things with being your own advocate and saying, who cares? This is my day. It's my life. I run this thing. Let's go. Then you can create the life you love where you live on your terms, right? But you then probably have to stop focusing on all the things that sort of keep you from actually doing what maybe is scarier. But it's actually not that these things are harder. They just require that kind of advocacy and courage for yourself. And so you said it just now about asking for this little thing and then making your art what you want. But this is a big deal. How you created your career is, who the hell, most people would say who are you to charge what you charge for your first retainer scrapbook client? And you're like, yeah, because that's what felt really good to me. So what do I care what people have to say? This is so important. We can sit here and talk about all the hours that you and I can spend doing things that we love. It exists for us and it exists for everyone. And what also exists is the confidence and courage to say, I'm going to go do this thing because I said so. I say when, I say how. I don't need any permission slip to go decide for me what I'm going to go do. And that is very inspiring to people, just like your artwork is, just like skydiving. It requires even more courage than skydiving in some cases. So tell me about that. Tell me about those moments in your life where you just decided to give yourself permission and it made a giant wave in your business.
The American Craft Story is a good place to start because I was already scrapbooking and on their design team. So I had a relationship with them. My cousin was moving from Chicago to LA cross country. I flew to Chicago to drive with her. I had never driven across country before. I thought it'd be super fun. And so as we were planning out our trip, I realized we could stop in Salt Lake City where American Crafts is based. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can I come see the office? Because I want to see that thicker wall. Thicker meaning it's these dimensional stickers. They called them thickers. They're alphabets. Anyway, if you know scrapbooking, you know thickers. And It's funny because now that I say it out loud, it's like you say it with a lisp, right? Stickers. Yeah. Okay. So then I emailed them and said, hey, this is the day we're going to come by. Can we go to lunch or something? They're like, yeah, sure. Why don't you come to the office? We'll give you both a tour and then we'll go for a team lunch. And I was like, that's awesome. So as I'm sitting there looking at all the products in their product room with a thicker wall behind, I just said to the person who was doing the creative direction at the time, I said, if you all ever want to do a collaboration, I would love that. I'd be so interested. And he said, the funny thing is, we were going to ask you. Uh, I'm not sure how long it'll take, but just knowing that you're interested, just stay in touch with me about it. I'm not sure because it has to go through a bunch of levels, right? To get approved to even bring on an outside designer. At the time, they only had one outside designer who didn't work in the office. This is 12 years ago. Gosh, 14 years ago. It's still like 2022 to me. I don't know why.
We
Not
lost 2 years during
2024.
COVID, so we can pretend it's 2 years ago.
So then fast forward 6 months, guess what? In December, when I'm least expecting it, they said, hey, we're ready to start. Bring all your ideas. We will bring you to Salt Lake. We'll have a week together. Bring all your ideas. It's for one collection, and it will show the following summer in Chicago at this show called CHA. So it was like a dream, right? So I brought all my ideas, and they told me, they said, okay, well, usually we have 6 colors for the color palette, so you have to narrow it down. And I was like, I want 12. Because I didn't realize black and white was included. So I was like, what do you mean? So I wanted 12 colors, and they're like, yeah, we've never done that before. And I was like, that's okay, that's what I want. And I also want to include everything that I love: sewing, crafts, travel, all these icons put together, airplanes, I don't know, sewing machines, all these things that don't seem to go together, but they are cohesive because they're what I love.
Yeah.
And they were fully accepting of it, and they trusted me. Somehow I convinced them. And guess what? That unlocked something for them as a company, because then they suddenly realized, oh, we don't have to stick to only 6 colors per collection. We can do whatever we want. We can branch off. It's okay to do that. And it was so beautiful because then I went on to do 10 years of collections with them, 20 collections in total.
No big deal. It's such a
But
cool
you have
story.
to ask, right? You have to just ask, because literally the worst they could have said was like, oh no, we're not going to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
They weren't going to, I don't know what, think about the worst things, right? In our minds, for some reason, we think the person is going to what? Laugh out loud in front of us and say, oh, you dummy, I would never do that. You'd never have that opportunity. Are you kidding me? That does not happen.
Right.
Whatever worst case scenario you have made up in your head, it's not going to happen. I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah. It's interesting. It reminds me, and my sister remembers because she came with me, but I had 2 of my daughters at the time. My oldest was like 4 and the younger one was like, 2.5. And I did something similar where I sent a message to Target and General Mills who are in Minnesota. And I said, oh, I happen to be coming to Minnesota. You're right. I'm like, oh, no, had no reason to go. I happen to be in Minnesota from this date to this date. And I've written music for other big brands, but I would just love to come by. And by the way, while I'm there with my 2 little girls, if you have any ideas of fun things that we can do, let me know. And so there off we went, apple picking. And sure enough, then I did book a trip to Minnesota. And I went to these big brands. And then sure enough, I got to write music for these people, right? And were there other people that I wrote to in Minnesota at ad agencies and whatnot who didn't respond? Yep. Did I even remember? No. Were there people who said, no, thanks? Yeah. And then did I do that again in Chicago? You bet I did. So we actually went to Minnesota and then flew, because it was only an hour flight, right to Chicago. And then that's how I got 2 McDonald's ads, right? So that trip wound up being $300,000 in music licenses. And my kids had these amazing experiences just because I was like, oh, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago. And I said, and by the way, it's a little trick I got from Tim Ferriss. I said, but when I just asked, like, I'm going to be in town, I'm like, by the way, what's the best place for pizza, right? Because Chicago's known for like deep dish. Here's the trick is that if you ask a specific, simple question like that people enjoy answering, then even if they wanted to say no, or even if they didn't think they were going to write back, they'll respond to that question. And so some people like didn't want to take the meeting, but they were like, you have to try such and such on this street and blah, 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 blah. And other people were like, just come by. And the just come by leads to a relationship, which leads to an opportunity. So I used to come back to LA and I would say, what are you guys doing? Like, you have access to phones and emails, like just make phone calls. They're like, how could you do that? I'm like, how can you not do that? Every single day that goes by, there are human beings looking for you, right? Every single person. Jonathan Adler told me he just called Barney's. He's like, oh, hey, girl, hey. So I have some stuff. How can I bring it over to you? And they were like, we'll come to you. And he's like, come to me. He was in this like 4th floor walk up. They came over, looked at his pottery, and he had like 4 pieces that he had made in summer camp. And he wasn't ready at all. And they were like, these are kind of cool, but can we have a different glaze? And he's like, absolutely, no problem, coming right up. So he rollerbladed down to Soho because he couldn't afford the other ways of getting down there, got fit, did this glaze in this kiln that he was able to rent. It had to be 6:30 a.m. That's the only time he could afford to rent it before they opened. And the rest is history. Like literally every single one of the people that I have met who I love, who I want to emulate, who are creative, who are enjoying their life, just made a few very courageous choices and then designed a life that's actually fulfilling. Bobbi Brown, same thing. She's got her 3 sons. She loves her life. She did not want to be a makeup artist standing on her feet. She had the guts to make her own lipstick and basically go to Bergdorf and see if she could sell it. And it was scary as hell. It is, but it's the reward for this. And so I want you guys, this is the conversation we're having, and I'll let you guys in a few minutes, if you want to put questions in the chat for Amy, we can answer a few, but I wanted to sort of showcase for you what I think are your, Amy, like the mic drops of who you are. It's like the unapologetic life of enjoying your life and slowing down and not being on anybody else's race because you actually want to enjoy it. And having the courage that when you do want to do something, you just go ahead and do the thing versus like overthinking it. Like that's not you. You're not like, I'm just going to sit here and like work on my website for 10 years. Like it's just never going to happen. So
The funny thing is, I do overthink so much. Something you were saying when you were mentioning Jonathan Adler, Bobbi Brown, which reminded me, I interviewed Bobbi Brown lifetimes ago when I was like 20 years old working for a magazine in Atlanta. So how funny is that? And by the way, I've also done collaborations with General Mills and McDonald's. And General Mills flew me out to Minnesota and I had no idea what I was doing, right? It was for when they had the box tops campaign.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, before it became digital. And it was just so funny because when you find yourself wanting something more than you currently have, right? Really think about why you want it. Why do you want this thing? Whether it's tangible, whether it's a level of success. And do me a favor, really get clear on what success means to you.
Yeah, I love that.
Not anybody else. What does success mean to you? Does success mean having a $5 million company and 0 time with your family, where you're constantly stressed and you're constantly working for your board of directors who has all the say over your time and energy and ideas? Or do you want a $500,000 business where you are in charge of your decisions, your choices, your freedom? Really get clear on success, because I love that. One of the other people sorry, I just thought of this. One of the other people I interviewed at the magazine was Cynthia Rowley. And I remember that she was just so fun. Like she was my kind of I loved fashion. So she was a fashion designer. She was super fun. She seemed to have a good relationship with her husband. Like she had a good family life. She was just this person who I was like, that's what success looks like to me.
Yeah.
Right. And it was so beautiful. She wrote a book with her girlfriend called The Swell Life. I don't know if you guys remember that. I think that's what it was called. Something about swell. But whoever you think is successful, right? Extract bits of it for yourself and your goals. Because really,
Yes.
I remember the story about the founder of Earl Jeans. And I don't know if you know, she like started it, in her garage. Her husband ended up quitting his job and working with her. And they built this multi-million-dollar denim brand. She had so much success. I met her at trade shows because I used to be in fashion. And then, you know what? She was interviewed saying the business succeeded, the marriage didn't.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, you know what? I don't want that.
right.
Like, I don't want
Mm,
to emasculate my partner working with me, a strong woman, and then have our relationship fall apart
right.
for the sake of a business.
Right.
But use examples of what you want and what you don't want.
Yeah.
It's okay to get clear on what you don't want. That'll actually help you point yourself in the direction of what you do want and what success does mean to you. And be brutally honest. If you want $1 million to say that you are the first person in your family to earn $1 million, that's great. But like, go deeper with that. What is it going to take? What sacrifices are you going to have to make? Are you going to have to burn bridges and relationships that are meaningful and valuable to you? Are you going to sacrifice your health and well-being for something that maybe, I don't care who you are. You could be a billionaire. If your health suffers,
Forget it.
is it worth it?
No. You and I have so many friends
We have a
and
lot of successful friends.
yeah, and we have a lot of people in our life who, if you're only looking at one metric, you can say, oh my gosh, this person is crushing it. And then if you looked at other things, you'd say, I would run miles in the other direction, because that is not the epitome of success to have adrenal fatigue, burnt out, horrible marriage, eating disorder, like, or any one of those things or combo of those things. There is this arbitrary sort of like more is better that you and I are always being, it's always the suggestion like, well, you could just scale here, you can build this. It's like, wait, why? You know what I mean? Like, why do I need to do that? Like, this is great. I just want to do more of what feels fulfilling. And I want to have a life that at the end of the day, I enjoyed how I spent it. Remember, because the world will keep saying like, scale it. Don't you want 20 million a year? Who said what? Why even do you want that? Do you know why you want that? Right? Because I have a friend who was working. I knew her from commercial real estate. She realized she was miserable. She was actually miserable. And she wanted a certain thing, and she kept working to have this certain view of the certain hills where this, but like never had time to be with it anyway. She got rid of all of it and wound up moving and teaching English as a second language and like living in Thailand and then living in the south of France and like lives this very off the beaten path life where all of it existed. I'm just saying anything you want already does exist in some form, that you don't have to keep being on the ladder that someone else put there for you that you don't want to be on, right? And I do think, though, Amy and I have similar visions. And so I do think it's also available, the ladder called, I'd love a certain amount of abundance in exchange for things I really like doing. And then I want to have all the fun. I want to make sure I don't just say I'm taking quality time with the kids, that I actually do it. Like, we go to Blackberry Mountain 3 times a year. Like, that is the only reason I'm working over here, is so that I get on that mountain. So I can't just say I'm going. But I think it's so important, the prompt that you're asking for us to really like deepen into? What does success actually look like? What does ease look like? What does it feel like? And I will just say one business point, which is for you and for me. Similarly, like when I was doing collaborations with a brand like Target or McDonald's, it's really as simple as understanding that if you have a gift, if you have a talent, if you have anything that you do, the question to be asking them is, how can I serve your vision with what I do? That's like what a collaboration is. And there is nobody who is smart who's not willing to be asked that question by somebody who might have a way of helping the vision. So when I went to McDonald's, I was like, here's what I do. I write these kinds of songs and I, play a ukulele, and like, what's your initiative? And is this a fit? Now, I wasn't going to say yes if it was a no for me, but can I add what I do to this? And very often there was like just so much just appreciation for even asking that question. It's like, see it as a generous offer that you're reaching out to say, how could I help serve with what I love to do, what you want to do? That's what a collaboration is. It's not like they're handing you something. They're not doing you a favor.
The funny thing is, I sometimes think they are doing you a favor, because if you're consistently putting yourself out there and sharing your joy, sharing your creativity, sharing your spark, your unique gift with the world, you get on people's radar and you have no idea how. I have this huge project coming up that I honestly don't know how they found me. And I've asked them and they're like, oh, I think I found you on Instagram or maybe on YouTube. And they don't even know. But it's so funny because this isn't even like monetarily nothing. Like, okay, but the alignment in values for this company is so beautiful. I am so excited because they're basically like, hey, you have complete creative freedom. We just want to feature you as a woman entrepreneur who uses our products. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you chose me? It's not even something that you can sign up for, right? You can't even apply for this job. Like, it's not, I didn't apply for a job. So I think with that though, it was the same thing that we were looking for a second home in 2018. We were going to either just get a second house to rent out as rental income, or we suddenly shifted into saying, hey, we actually want to buy another house and we'll move into it.
You
And
should give
Cathy,
everyone the link to look at it in the magazine because it's so beautiful.
Oh yeah, so if you just Google Amy Tangerine Dwell or Amy Tangerine Clever, you'll see our home. So we bought this home, but before we finally found the house, because it was a crazy real estate market, we had bid on 3 other houses and lost. And I was just like about to give up, as I do. And I like to give up because I like to find that other thing that I want to pursue and focus my energy on.
I love that sentence. I like to give up. So
I know how sometimes
I do too. I'm not attached to it. Like,
giving up is failure, but it's not. It is not.
Get the momentum where it needs to be.
Right? Giving up is not failure. Okay? You are not a failure. You are never a failure. You are perfect as you are. But giving up is not an act of failing. And I think that that's what I had to really get in my head, because I felt as though that dream wasn't going in the direction that I wanted to. And because I was such a control freak, I thought giving up and surrendering was an act of failing, but it wasn't. So all of a sudden I'm like sharing, this journey of creativity, everything that I'm doing. Bank of America wants to do a collaboration with me about this mortgage thing that you can get. And they're like, oh yeah, we want it to be ongoing and you can do whatever you want. We were thinking that maybe you could like scrapbook something. And I'm like, Bank of America wants me to scrapbook something? That is so bizarre. And literally that campaign helped us with our down payment. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have no idea the craziness. And you might get some haters who are like, Bank of America is a corporation and da da da. It's like, hello, I've banked with Bank of America since I was 14 years old. I still have that same dang checking account earning 3 cents a month or whatever it is, right?
Oh my God. When I was doing music and people at like a hotel cafe and these like cool people would be like, I get that like you get to like drive a new car, but like you sold out because you work with brands. And I'm like, I'm eating. And then that deal with that brand, it was the investor that paid for me to go in the studio and write the other 20 songs that are for me, like the sad songs, the songs that nobody cares. Like, are you insane? And by the way, that's how everything goes. Like at the end of the day, there is a way for you. And by the way, I love the songs that I wrote for this. It's not like they had me saying things I hated. I said beautiful things. I said, let your color shine, which Amy actually made a sticker of. Like, I wrote the most beautiful words for them. I mean, it just so happened they paid me well to do it, but they didn't even own the song. It's just a license. Like, it doesn't have to be this mutually exclusive thing. Like, oh, you're the worst because you sold out. You didn't sell out. Your work is now everywhere. Like, good for you. You're getting paid
It's
for
so
it.
beautiful. There's the sticker.
Let your color shine. Yeah. These are such important reminders, you guys. What does success actually look like to you, right? And what Amy just talked about in the letting go, this is called Esther Hicks 101, because to manifest in your life, it's just about momentum. And momentum means being on the path of receptivity and not resistance. When you are strong arming it and you're like, it has to be this path, it has to be this, it's like, forget it. You may as well just understand you're now the bottleneck forever. Like, I would write a song in the studio and some songs just like come, and other songs like, you just can't find the second verse. And I'd be like, let it go. I'm over that song. Like, if it comes back to me, great, move on. And so it's interesting you said that, because I quit projects all the time. I don't even remember that I do, but that's actually why I can have momentum, because I'm not precious about it. I'm like, that doesn't feel like it's going. Move the hell on. Let's go this way. It all feels like the name of the game is, where is momentum? Where am I in the flow, rather than like pushing? Don't be pushing, because look what you would have lost out on, right?
And being open. And I love the idea of flow, because when you're in a creative flow state, you are really just flowing along with the river, right? Where the river is taking you. And you know that maybe you'll end up in this beautiful place, but you don't know the journey that you're on and how it's going to unfold. I had to say no to a project earlier this year because my husband went on a 10-day Vipassana retreat, and I
That's
could
amazing.
not take on this project, just being at home with my kids and the studio moving back in here. And I had to say no to it. It really kind of hurt my heart to say no, but I was just like, look, the timing just does not work, and I know that I won't be able to give it my all. And they said, okay, we'll let you know if anything changes. It was for like just beginning of February. All right. But I had to do all the work in December and January for it. And it was just, I had to say no. Well, guess what happened, Cathy? I got invited to the Grammys.
I
know that's like so random, and I don't know how that gets put together. But if I were working on this other project that was literally due the Monday after the Grammys, I would have had to miss out, or been stressed, or been whatever. And because I had opened up to the flow of my life, to the flow of abundance that's waiting to come in, the funny thing is, it's never even been on my bucket list to go to the Grammys, because like, what the heck am I doing at the Grammys, right? It's just not on my radar or bucket list. And so I had a meeting on Monday, and the person I had a meeting with was like, it's beyond bucket list. And I was like, oh my gosh, think about the things
right.
that are beyond your bucket list. It's even higher. It's even more elevated, because the universe wants to give you so much more abundance than you can even imagine in your head. And by the way, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I don't want to say it was life-changing, but watching Tracy Chapman, I mean, I still have chills. I'm still processing. I still have not put it into my journal, my planner, but I'll show you what I did put in. So that's what I put in. That's it so far. And here's the thing. This is the program to the Grammys. it. It's huge. I carried this thing with me. I'm like, I'm a scrapbooker. I'm taking this home. Pouring down rain. I don't even care. We didn't take umbrellas and I'm going like this. I mean, it's just so ridiculous how life is sometimes, right? And ridiculously beautiful if you're open and you're aligned and you're clear on what you desire and dream of.
I love that so much.